The HOA president picked my late wife's favorite field for her daughter's wedding, forged my name on the permit, and built the entire setup without asking me, which would have been bad enough on its own, except for one little problem. I had already filed a perfectly legal manure spread for that exact Saturday morning. Yeah, that happened. My name's Walter Bennett. I'm 57 years old, and I've been farming the same Kentucky land my grandfather bought back in 1951. Not a hobby farm either. I mean real cattle work, long days, busted fences, tractors older than some marriages. The West pasture meant more to me than money ever could because that's where my wife, Diane, used to walk every evening before cancer took her 4 years ago. So when the new HOA queen across the road decided that field would make the perfect, rustic luxury wedding venue for her daughter, I told her no. Simple as that. She smiled like she understood. But the kind of smile that tells you the fight just started. A month later I came home from a livestock auction and nearly drove my truck into a ditch. There were wedding tents all over my pasture. Giant white sailcloth tents, catering vans, strings of lights wrapped around my wife's gazebo. Workers hammering dance floor supports into my grass like they owned the place. One guy in a safety vest actually waved me away and said, "Sir, private event setup in progress. On my land." I asked to see the permit, mostly because I wanted to know how stupid these people really were. Sure enough, there it was, my farm name, my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. They'd forged the whole thing. Now let me back up a sec. Most people think farmers are slow because we're quiet. That's the mistake Brenda Mercer made. She thought because I lived alone and kept to myself after Diane died, I'd roll over if she pushed hard enough. What she didn't know was I already had a manure application scheduled with the county 2 weeks earlier. Perfectly legal, protected under Kentucky's right to farm laws, impossible to stop without a judge. And the only judge available that weekend was apparently at his grandson's football tournament. Funny how timing works sometimes. My attorney, Frank Holloway, took one look at that forged permit and nearly grinned himself to death. He'd been fighting HOA nonsense for decades and said, "Walter, this might be the prettiest case I've ever seen." Turns out Brenda's husband had bribed a zoning clerk to rubber stamp the paperwork. State investigators got involved fast once the forgery surfaced, and suddenly this wedding became a criminal investigation with table linens. But here's the twist nobody expected. I met the bride the day before the wedding. Sweet kid, honestly. Nervous, polite, totally in the dark. Her mother had told her I personally approved the venue and was happy to help. When I showed her the forged permit, I watched that poor girl realize in real time that her entire wedding had been built on a lie. She cried quietly into a coffee cup while downtown traffic rolled past outside the diner window. I told her 2 things. First, I had a friend with a beautiful horse barn 20 minutes away and she could use it free of charge. Second, at exactly 7 o'clock the next morning, I was legally spraying 2,000 gallons of aged cattle manure across my west pasture. Her eyes got huge. Then she whispered, "Honestly, my mom deserves this." I almost choked on my coffee. Saturday morning looked like a movie scene. Caterers unloading champagne, violinists tuning instruments, bridesmaids carrying garment bags through the fog. 200 white chairs lined up facing the gazebo Diane built with me before she got sick. At 6:59, I parked my John Deere at the north end of the field. My lawyer sat beside me. 2 sheriff deputies waited near the gate. And at exactly 7 a.m., I engaged the PTO. Now, if you've never seen liquid manure launch from a commercial spreader at sunrise, let me paint the picture for you. A giant brown arc blasted across that wedding setup like Old Testament vengeance. The smell hit first. Then the screaming. Guests ran in every direction. Musicians grabbed violins and sprinted. Somebody dropped the wedding cake face first into the mud. One teenager laughed so hard he fell backward off a folding chair. Meanwhile, Brenda came storming out of the bridal tent in a silk robe shrieking, "Stop him!" Sheriff Dalton stepped right in front of her and calmly said, "Ma'am, this is a protected agricultural operation." Then came the real show. 3 state police SUVs rolled through the gate, while manure mist drifted across the tents like battlefield smoke. Investigators arrested Brenda, her husband, and the county clerk right there beside the ruined dance floor. Brenda looked at me like she still couldn't believe consequences were real. I climbed down from the tractor, looked her dead in the eye and said, "This was my wife's field. That was it. Didn't need anything else." The daughter got married later that afternoon at the horse barn, and from what I heard, it ended up being beautiful, probably because nobody committed felonies to make it happen. As for the HOA, half the neighborhood turned on Brenda overnight. Lawsuits flew everywhere. The board got replaced, and that west pasture grew greener the next spring than it had in years. Maybe Diane had something to do with that. Who knows? But I'll tell you this much. Some people think land is just dirt until they cross a man who buried part of his heart there. So what do you think? Did I go too far, or did Brenda finally get exactly what she earned?